Premiered in London on July 26, 1951, with a general release on July 28, 1951, this adaptation of Lewis Carroll's work was not the first time Walt Disney produced an animated version of the book. It began pre-production as far back as 1938, when Snow White was a big success, and its continued popularity on TV and in the 1970s re-releases have led to theme park attractions, a live-action reimagining and sequel, and has kept a steady fan base, regardless of the detractors who have found it to be a bad adaptation. It first hit home video in 1981, and for the purpose of this podcast, we watched the 2011 60th anniversary Blu-ray. Hi, I'm Justin, and across from me is Stella, and this is the discussion on Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland. Welcome to the show, and I think from the last episode, which was about a month ago, it's been a while, but I thought when we did the randomizer and we got Alice in Wonderland that Stella said she had never seen the movie. So I need everybody to go back to that episode, fast forward to the end, and or listen to the whole thing, and then tell me if she says yes or no, did she see the movie, because...
How about not call me out? I don't know why... I'm not saying I didn't say that, but I don't know why I would, because that's not true.
I could have just listened to it again, but I thought...
Please do it.
I felt that even before we did this podcast, when we would talk about Disney movies, you'd always point to Alice in Wonderland as one you hadn't seen, but you said you didn't own it. So
no, my mom hated that movie and Pinocchio, and we didn't... Maybe we owned Pinocchio, but no, she didn't like those movies. So I've seen them once, but...
Yeah, so I thought, because of that, I thought then you said you hadn't seen it, so I was really excited to watch it with you. I'm like, I don't know. I had a feeling you weren't going to be too into it, because it's not really story-driven. And before we even start, you're like, oh, no, I've seen this before. And I'm like, oh, well, what the hey. I guess... All right, well, I guess you've seen it before, so you already know what you're in for. Did you know what you were in for?
Yeah, I've seen it before. What do you mean?
Yeah, but, like, how long has it been?
A long time.
Did you remember most of it after watching it again?
Yeah.
And is it just as, I don't know, did you like it?
I don't know. I don't know if I would really watch it again.
It's a hard one to pin down. When was the first time you saw the movie, since you have seen it before?
I was little. 7. I don't know.
But you didn't own it?
No.
But you must have gotten it at some point
to watch.
Don't
ask how I watched it, because I have no idea. I don't remember.
We had the VHS of it, and I remember watching it and liking it more than some of the other ones because, being the boy I wasn't too into the princess movies, but I liked Alice in Wonderland because it wasn't princess driven. It wasn't with the castles and the kings and queens and stuff like that. It was just kind of a different sort of Disney movie. So I always enjoyed it for that, because it was just it wasn't just about some romance plot with sword battle and, some weird fantasy twist, which I like that stuff now, but at the time, not as much. This was definitely more my kind of story, if you would call it that.
There's not really a story.
It isn't. And, even watching it, the one thing I always remember as a kid was when they do that little bit with the walrus and the carpenter and how it just detracts for 10 minutes. I feel like I fast-forwarded through that scene when I would watch it because I had no interest in that part of the movie, and I had no idea why it was happening, and it was weird because we had a couple of the the package films that came out during the 40s that weren't really movies, but they were just a compilation of short films. One of them we had was Fun and Fancy Free, and that was the same kind of movie. And watching as a kid, I always thought it was so weird. I was like, why? This isn't really a movie. This is just like random stuff going on. And Alice in Wonderland felt like the same thing, even though this movie came out after that period, and this movie was way more of a focused production, way more, it had a budget. They were trying to make like a story, but it's because the source material is so crazy that I guess this is the best that, they could do for a story.
I'm still annoyed that 90% of the movie was her following the rabbit because he was late, and then she just dropped it, and we didn't know what was he going to, what was so important. She just gave up. She's like, okay, I'm gonna go home now.
I think it's because the original book is there's a lot more allegory to the whole thing, metaphors and such that isn't really present in this movie. This movie took a lot of that allegory and kind of just kept the weirdness of it, but not really the symbolism part of it. So it's a lot more looser about what it's trying to portray. So stuff like that, I don't think really hits your head as much or, intrigues people as much, especially older audiences, because it kind of has less meaning. It's meant to be more just silly and fantastical. And I wish I had read the book to maybe have a better idea of what the original source material is, but I've honestly never really studied it. I've never read it. I don't know too much about it other than this movie and some of the other adaptations I've watched and maybe a couple YouTube videos of people talking about it.
It'll be harder to read because you like all this weird stuff, you can't really picture it.
Especially because we're not British. I think that's a big part of it. It's that dialect and the way they structure the sentences. I, in high school, tried reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a British novel, very similar to this, where there's a lot of allegory to it, but it's just a bunch of fantastical, silly things going on where, British humor is just kind of picking out a weird object from the house and being like, oh, and this thing has a brain and talks, and it's like, oh, and it doesn't really have any significant meaning sometimes, or sometimes it does. So reading something like Hitchhiker's Guide, especially with the way they talk and that British humor, it didn't work too well for me. And
Did you finish it?
I couldn't finish it. I tried my best, but it was a little too difficult. And maybe I'll give it another chance. I've seen that adaptation, and that movie I think is pretty funny. And I like British comedies and British movies a lot, but it's some of those older stories that I just can't. I haven't read enough of it lately. I feel like I could do better with it now, but Alice in Wonderland is kind of that same thing, though, where it's just weird sentence structure. I want to know, what did you give this out of 10?
4.5.
Really?
Yeah.
You thought it was that bad?
It's not bad, but it's not good.
I still like it.
I don't know, it just seems pointless and kids would enjoy it more. And now I'm just what is the point in watching this?
I felt while watching it that we kept talking about if they were in the writer's room, especially during that house scene. I was just making fun of that whole process of writing that, how they, because you were talking about the chimney sweeper was just walking down the road, and he was a lizard, and you're like, oh, there's just that guy, he just happens to be around, and that's their pal who has to go clean out the chimney, or
and then dies. Wait, what'd you give it out of 10?
I give it 8 out of 10.
That's high.
Yeah, but there's a lot of aspects to it that I still like, even though I didn't like the movie nearly as much as I remembered when I watched it a couple years back. But I still I like it a lot. I think, though, it's just kind of fun to make fun of. Especially, I was talking about that scene with the house and the lizard walking by. How the whole thing is he has to go in there and chimney sweep because they got to find a way to get Alice out of the house, and that's like the whole thing that's going on. And when they're like in the writer's room, and they had to say, oh yeah, well, we're gonna have a chimney sweeper come by, and and he'll be just walking by, so we'll just have him there. It's like, wait, what do you mean? And he's like, whoa, like, do we need to explain where the chimney sweeper came from? Like,
it's gonna be a lizard. He's gonna carry a ladder, and he's just gonna walk by. Like,
and then then the writer's like, no, that's not my problem. Why is the chimney sweeper gonna get the Alice out of the house? It's like, we could talk about the other thing on another day about where the chimney sweeper came from. Why is that the thing that gets Alice out of the house? Like,
the other guy's trying to set it on fire.
Right, and even when Alice is out of the house, he's still trying to start the house on fire, and it's so weird and random, but I like it because of that, because I think that's funny. Like, that idea of that dodo bird trying to still start the fire even though the problem has been solved is like hilarious to me. The fact that they throw the chimney sweeper up there, it gets blown out of the house into space, we never see him again, and they screw over his life, and they're just like, oh, poor Bill, alright, well, we better just smoke it out then. And I like it. The whole movie is supposed to be, I guess, in Alice's like dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And did you like that idea of having it be framed like that?
Yeah, because it makes sense why it's so weird and random, because dreams are like that sometimes.
Such a cliche by now. Like, any movie that does that nowadays would, I feel like, get lambasted for even trying to make an excuse like that for their making a weird movie. I mean, Wizard of Oz did it, and then this movie did it, and there's probably more movies from back in that time that did it, but Wizard of Oz was probably the more prominent one. I don't know if that's how the original book is, if that's what happens, if it's all in her dreams or not.
Wizard of Oz or Alice?
Alice in Wonderland. We're not talking about Wizard of Oz.
You were.
I just brought it up. Comparison. I'm wondering if the book is like that, because I feel like that'd be a cheap shot that the writers of the American version of the book would do. But I don't know. I haven't read it, so I'd like to know.
Look it up.
It was just a cliche during that time, though, so I don't know. I don't mind it. I guess it does kind of solve things, but there's a part of me that wishes it would have been all real, that it would have been just this funky world that just exists, but so much of it would have been unanswered then. I don't know. I think we should just... It's hard to talk about this movie.
Because it's just so random. Like, there's not...
Well, we can't break it up into, like, talk about the story, because there's not... The story is really just talking about a number of sequences that happens. We can talk about Alice, the character, not a Disney princess, or hasn't really ever been considered one. But what do you think of her as a character, then?
She's fine.
I just kind of wonder is she supposed to be... How old is she supposed to be? Like, is she an 8-year-old, or is she supposed to be...
I don't know, like 10, maybe?
Probably.
Or is that too old? I don't know.
Well, I think in the original book she was younger, and I think a lot of adaptations make her younger.
It doesn't make sense how she talks and she sounds like older, but then, like, what she does and her motives seem like a little kiddish.
Mm-hmm. She is being taught in the middle of the woods with her sister, which you pointed out before we even watched it, and I was like, I thought that's her mother, and then it kind of... Even in the movie... she's
listed, like, the voice actor says Alice's sister. I was like, why is it? Why is her sister homeschooling her?
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a thing from that time, if that was common for the older children to teach the younger children, but that woman looks like a mother. Like, that, I don't even understand.
There's a big age difference.
Right.
Well, maybe they have a brother in between, and
maybe
he is working.
I don't know if that's probably another thing where it was probably like that in the book, but I feel like that's not how it was done for the movie. I feel like they made her a mother, and they're like, well, in the book it's a sister, and they're like, just call her sister, and that fixes the... I'm like, it doesn't really, though, because it still looks like, that's a 40-year-old woman teaching her, but maybe... I mean, that was a different time, and people looked older then, sometimes, depending on the clothing they'd wear and such, because, people were considered adults at a different age, so I don't know. Maybe that's what they were going for. But I don't know. Alice, I feel like, doesn't have much of a personality going for her.
Mm-mm.
It just seems like she's meant to be there as the person experiencing all this weird stuff happening. And that's it. So she doesn't become that memorable to me. But it's everything else that does.
I wonder how many lines she has, like, besides singing and stuff. It's mostly the other people, and she's just, like, reacting to it.
Right. We could have counted. I mean, it probably wouldn't have been hard. I feel like she actually does talk a lot more in this movie than a lot of the animated females of the time. I feel like I heard more lines out of her than someone like Cinderella or especially Snow White.
Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, especially. My favorite of the side characters is definitely the Cheshire Cat, which...
I don't like him.
Why?
Because it's weird.
He's such a outside political actor. Just no affiliation to anything, but chooses still to mess up everything. And I find that so funny. He just randomly appears, kind of screws with everybody's head, causes a big fiasco towards the end, and he what was he there for? He was just there to mess with everything.
What are any of them there for?
Hey, we're not gonna get into that discussion. No, I love him though. I feel that is the one I relate to.
Him?
Yeah.
You relate to
just
him?
staying on the outside but causing trouble, you know?
Yep.
Well, the guy who sits in the sidelines and says, "Fight!" Like,
okay. Stop.
Even though it's like, I have nothing to do with this, but fight! Do it! So she goes into Wonderland, and I don't know, did we just talk about it by sequence? Because she goes in, and then that door is locked right away, and that whole thing is always funny to me.
She shrinks and she grows, and she shrinks and she grows, and then she eats the thing because she's all big and she's crying. And then she shrinks again. She forgot the key, and it made me so mad. But he let her in anyways. I was like, that's the whole problem.
I like that so much, though, when she shrinks, and then he's like, oh, wait, you still need the key. And I always thought that the key was just on the table, but I never realized until watching it now, that, oh, the key doesn't appear until he mentions it. So it's not even her fault that she didn't see the key. How was she supposed to know? And then, we go into Wonderland, and, like, the first people we run into, besides the dodo, who's getting pushed around by a bunch of birds, which is, to me, one of the funniest looking, just designs for a character and for the way he goes about traveling. We meet Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which I feel like those characters, are so commonly used in the public, lexicon. That
people dress up as them as Halloween.
Yeah, but
as Halloween for Halloween.
In this movie, though, I don't get them. They're so weird, and I don't get their costumes. They're just funny looking. Like, it's such a boyish 1940s schoolboy outfit thing.
It bothers me how some people, like those two, are human and the queen, but nobody else. And then, like, the flowers, when Alice meets them, they're like, what are you? They have human, like, what?
Yeah, but no one's that small. That was the thing. She was small during that scene, and so no one had ever been down to their level.
Well,
I want to talk about the song, what they sing about, the tale of the walrus and the carpenter, which you love that scene.
I don't. It's so sad.
With the little baby.
Don't say clams. They're oysters.
I was gonna say clams again.
I know.
Little baby oysters that he I don't know. I always found that whole thing funny, but I thought when the walrus eats all the oysters, I thought that the carpenter killed him. Not like on screen, but I thought like they go behind a door and you see like the hammer like hit him, and then that's like the end. I didn't know it was just chasing him out. So I had like a darker idea of how that ended than.
You just imagined it?
Maybe. I mean, I guess, that's the impression they want to give, is that he's that angry, he's going to kill him. And, well, that's what I got of it. As a kid, I literally thought he killed him.
Yikes.
Maybe they edited it. Maybe it's in the VHS.
Maybe. Look.
No. I'm too lazy. I'm not going to pop in a VHS right now. I know the internet exists, but I'm not going to ask it. But you don't like that scene because all the oysters get eaten.
So sad. They're so cute.
But they're in the movie later. They show up again, so they must have
Not
lived.
those ones.
Well,
there's new ones.
So the walrus found even more oysters?
No, he died, remember? You said he got killed.
Well, he's at the end, so explain that.
Is he really?
Yeah. When they're all running around the circle and during the final chase, he's in the circle.
She's imagining it.
Oh.
They're not real.
That is the thing. It is all just one big dream.
Exactly.
How do you get told a story within a dream?
I don't know.
Like, how do you get told by someone a story and then you kind of enter that story? You know, that's a weird framing device. And then we go into God, it's kind of even hard to remember where everything happens.
What
the
is
caterpillar.
Next?
The caterpillar comes next.
I thought it was the flowers.
No, the flowers are after.
You should look it up.
Actually,
the orders of everything.
No, maybe it is the caterpillar next because no, it's the Cheshire cat.
He's later.
No, he shows up twice.
But he's way later.
Yeah. He shows up twice.
He shows up with the queen at the end.
Oh, they go to the rabbit's house after that, which we kind of talked about already, and she gets big in that house, and that's my... I do love that part. That scene's very memorable to me. I love when she's just, like, walking by. She's like, I'm going to go destroy that house now, and...
She does not think that.
Well, that's what I was doing her voiceover. And the rabbit... It's calling for Marianne and walks right past her, but then declares that she is Marianne. And I'm like, this is just such a... How is it a kid could, like, comprehend most of this? I don't know.
No. I can't even. So there's nothing to comprehend. You just watch it, and that's it.
Well, I think it maybe works for kids because often children aren't really paying attention to the stories and the words anyway. So
Would that be even more confusing then?
Well, if they're glossing over... dialogue in a movie typically anyway. There's no problem with the dialogue being so weird in this movie because they're not really paying attention to it anyway. I feel like I never remember all this dialogue from when I was a kid, but I still liked the movie. But, like, watching it now, I'm like, I'm surprised as a kid I watched this because this really is just all bonkers all over the place. After she leaves the house, then she goes with the caterpillar because she's still really tiny. So she's trying to get, like, an explanation from the caterpillar to get bigger.
And then the flowers, and then the cat.
Yeah. Okay, so the cat does show up later. But that was before she met... Well, I was just saying because he shows up twice. And then...
The tea party?
Yeah, which... I like those guys. It seems like they're just having forever lasting drunk, basically. I think it's funny, though, when they show up again later with the queen, it seems like they can bust on the queen's chops just fine, They're like,
not afraid of her.
Yeah, they're, like, jumping on her and, like, terrorizing her. And then I know that she's looking for blame from someone, so she could, realistically blame them for the incident if needed, but she blamed Alice instead. But even before that, like, the March hair's getting right in her face, and then she seems fine with it. And then, like, her reactions make just no sense.
Why is she fine with anything that King says? Like, he's just, like, always talking her down. She's like, all right.
The king is her husband.
So?
He's just trying to be very nice. He's like,
you see their size difference?
What if we just have a trial?
You really think she...
What if we just have... He's just such a nice guy. And she's like, all right, I guess we can have a trial. Even during the trial, like, she's kind of... like, Alice is still kind of being kind to her. And she's, like, accepting of that kindness, even though she still really wants to take her head off. See, that's where that allegory comes in. I'm like, I feel like this is how oligarchs really are. I feel like this is how the upper class really is. This is it. This is exactly what it's like. So that part, I think, is very spot on.
Do you know from experience?
Yeah.
Oh.
I like the queen.
I don't.
I think she's funny.
She's very, like, manly.
I like that design in her. I like that she kind of has a butch look to her. Not what you typically would expect from a queen. And she has such a range of expression. Like...
No, happy or mad.
Yeah, but it's a range. Like, her facial expressions just go all over the place. So that stuff really works for me. The flowers sequence is funny. Those flowers are jerks.
They're feisty. All of them. They're like so nice in the beginning and then they just turn on her quick.
Well, also the fact that they don't ask her who she is until after. Like, I like how she can get along with them, they can have a camaraderie, but then the fact that she's not a flower, they only realize that after, like, wait a minute. And I'm like, I feel like this is how a lot of people are. Like, getting along with people until they realize that, wait a minute, they don't fit in with, my length of acceptance, which is, I don't accept most people who aren't me. And finding out afterwards that they are not, in fact, me, even though they were a good time. Won't be friends with them anymore. I feel like these are songs that people will recite, but they're not really ones that are popular within the Disney history. Like, I don't think a lot of these, like, they have good tunes and
I like the background music, but I don't remember any of the songs.
But the actual songs, like, none of them are songs that people... it's weird because they are popular still though. Like, I'm Late, the song that, like, the rabbit sings, I feel like people say that and will sing that song, but it's not like one that is actually like popular. It's not one that's like the other songs in the Disney catalog. This has just got the weirdest bunch of music where like the songs are very short and they're almost like nursery rhymes, just really quick. Like,
it's a song when she's like singing by herself. That doesn't really feel like a song.
Yeah.
Sounds like she's just like talking it and just repeating herself a lot.
I feel like that scene is not supposed to be sad. I feel like I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I feel like I want to laugh because I feel like she's being overly emotional about almost nothing. Like, I don't... she's talking... I don't know. It's just kind of a weird scene, and I kind of forgot that it was in the movie. But...
What are the other songs?
There's the ones where they're singing about In the Golden Afternoon. There's the Marian birthday song, Painting the Roses Red. Songs like that. And then the opening Alice in Wonderland song, which is just that classic old style opening credits music.
They all kind of sound the same.
Right.
I like it though.
And yeah, this one's not really... I feel like it's not well known for its music, but people still know the songs. The only real song I feel like is that song that the flowers sing, but even that one's not... It's not great, but I do enjoy them. None of them... They don't have annoying songs in this movie, and nothing that I think has aged horribly. I'm really just a big fan of the movie because of the animation. Really wide range of character designs and way different set of colors that I feel like I had never seen in previous Disney movies.
There's a ton of colors in it.
Where I feel like the previous ones tried to have a more realistic, earthy tones to it. And this one, it was way more...
bright.
Yeah, just brighter colors. Neon-y at times. And just the designs, because watching some of these characters, it doesn't feel like what Disney had done before that this would be a Disney movie. And especially what Disney would do after. None of their other movies from the 1950s really look like this, or have characters like this, or even like a story like this. And yeah, just gotta kind of wonder, what was the whole push for this one? What was the direction? What were they wanting to achieve? And why was this one so different?
What if they just had everybody's ideas together and then they threw them out there and they're like, we'll do it all? Seems
like it. Even today, where you take so many things from classic Disney films and they still carry it over today to the parks. This movie, they don't so much, not in the parks, but even through their specials that they do, or other tributes, or through their brand in general. But there's a lot of merchandise from this movie, and they do have a lot of stuff in the parks based on this movie. And
because you said he really liked it.
Yeah, well, it was Walt Disney who I think specifically liked Alice in Wonderland. He had done an Alice in Wonderland adaptation in the past. It was like the first thing he ever did. And when he was building Disneyland, this movie was released a little bit before they started working on it. And Alice in Wonderland wasn't like a huge success at the time, but he still incorporated a lot of it into the parks. They re-released it on TV, edited down to an hour, and that was part of his show Disneyland, which was promoting the park. So I think he just always had an admiration for the books, and then he incorporated it into the parks. They had the Mad Hatter teapot ride, or the teacups, and they had the later ride, which was just like a dark ride through the movie, basically. A lot of love for this movie, but one that if you look outside of the parks, or like even just those rides, it doesn't seem like it shows up anywhere else. Like, even people talking about the movie,
I never hear anybody really say anything about it.
I feel like people put it outside of what a Disney movie typically is, because it really is just so different. For quite a few years, it'd be quite a while before they would do anything quite as different as this. Definitely not in the 50s, 60s, 70s, nothing. It would all kind of go back to the Snow White structure, which was, Cinderella came out a year before this movie, and that was a big success. That was like his big return to doing the classic Disney animated stories.
What movie did he do right after this?
Peter Pan. And then, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, that was his movies of the 50s, so this one just kind of sticks out. But I still very much enjoy it. It's been adapted many times. I mean, I haven't seen nearly every adaptation. The Tim Burton movie, which I still like, and I kind of think is meant to be a sequel to this movie rather than... it's a reimagining. I wouldn't really call it a remake, but I wouldn't really call it its own separate, new adaptation, because it takes a lot from the animated movie. And by the end, when you start seeing some flashbacks, I'm like, I think it's meant to be a sequel to this. It feels like that's what they're going for. But
that one I actually haven't seen.
You should check it out. But not the... You've seen the sequel, though. Through the Looking Glass.
No, I haven't.
Oh, well,
I said you've seen
a Through the Looking Glass adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Which...
that was an older one, and it was creepy.
I think you saw the one that aired on TV that had, like, a bunch of famous celebrities as, like, the characters, and they had just... almost like the makeup that they do in Cats, where you could see their human face, but it's got, like...
Yeah, it was icky.
Yeah. I forgot I think it's just called Alice in Wonderland, but it was a TV movie, and then they had a sequel that same week, or maybe it was a week later, which was Through the Looking Glass, and they had the Jabberwocky come in, and that was like that giant dragon-looking thing. So I don't know if that's what freaked you out, but... Yeah, there's no Jabberwocky.
I don't know what that is.
Jabberwocky's the big giant, like, dragon thing. That's from the books. Which is not in this movie. It's in the Tim Burton movie. And then Alice Through the Looking Glass is the sequel that came out in 2016, and that movie sucks. So, never watched that. But I still like the live action movie. I think it's fine.
1 out of 10.
I don't know. It's been too long. I mean, I'm just saying that from what I've seen it a couple times, but it's been a while since I've seen it, but I still like it more than other people. A lot of people just go after it. I don't like the whole culture that went around it with the merchandise and people like quoting it, and it was a bit overdone.
It's like a cult.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad that went away. Do you have anything else to say about Alice in Wonderland?
I don't really have anything to say. But
That's it?
I don't even know what to say about it. It's just weird.
Great animation.
True.
I like how they make the cards look. It's kind of like crazy that they were able to do that back in that time. Nowadays, if you even were to do a 2D animation movie, they would have done that in the computer, I feel like. That sequence.
Is that your favorite scene?
With the cards?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I really like some of the dialogue between the Cheshire Cat and Alice, and I really like how crazy the ending of the movie gets, especially when they're kind of just running through this earlier scenes, and it kind of just wraps up the whole thing. I think that's really funny, and I love when movies do that kind of thing.
Guess what mine is?
The flowers.
No. I told you when we were watching it.
Just seeing the little oysters.
No, because that's sad.
But you get to see the oysters.
Sad.
What's your favorite scene?
It's in the beginning when she tries to get through the door. Because those little cookies look so good. And I don't know why I like when she drinks that stuff and she shrinks. I don't know why I think it looks so cool. And then it just goes downhill from it. Just kidding.
It's all downhill from here.
Mm-hmm.
Alice in Wonderland is the most of that time weirdest of Walt Disney's productions. But I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they took a shot and went for it, and it's still popular. I mean, has a fan base. A lot of the people who like Lewis Carroll do not like that adaptation. They think it's awful.
Because I spelled his name wrong.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Yeah, they spelt his name wrong at the beginning title card. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to have 2 L's and it only has 1. Yeah, they don't like it, and they think it's just the Americanized version of it. And
I mean, probably is.
Well, yeah. I just kind of want to know, though, like, what's their supreme adaptation? I feel like when there's a really popular adaptation of a book and the fan base of the book doesn't like it, I just feel like there's no way to make you happy. It's just, I'm sorry, but you will not be happy with anything.
They just like the book too much.
Right.
And everybody's going to have their own opinion. You can't please everybody.
I mean, there's people who are unhappy with The Lord of the Rings. Even though those, like, were probably the most detailed and long-form adaptations ever, people are still like, nah. So I don't know how you make people happy with an adaptation. You pretty much just can't.
You don't.
You fail no matter what. But I think the idea of adaptations are fun, just to see someone else's take on a thing that already exists. And if you don't like that, I don't know. I feel like you have to at least watch it outside of the book a little bit. You could be unhappy, but you gotta like think of it outside the book.
Because it's not the same. It's 2 different things still.
I think about that with like Harry Potter. My favorite of those is the 3rd one, but if you compare it to the book, I'm like, they messed up a lot of things, and they cut out a lot of things that are heavily referenced in later movies, even though it was not done properly in the 3rd movie. But I still think the 3rd movie is the best one, because it's a good movie. And it is a good adaptation. It's just, they cut a lot of things out still. And they do that a lot in Harry Potter and a lot of books. And
because they're long. They're so long, and the movies are pretty long too.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was probably not a good adaptation of that book because it cut a lot of things out, restructured things, kind of changed the ending, and still a lot of people like that movie, but they made another adaptation of it, once again by Tim Burton, weirdly enough. Seems like he just kind of does all these classic movies and tries to do a new adaptation. It's like, no, this is my vision. And I like his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because it kind of did stay more true to the book. But watching them both back to back, I still think the 70s one is probably still better. It's probably going to age better. But I don't know. I think it's funny, though. Like, it's fun to kind of find the fan bases for books who get most angry. And I think this is one where if you asked any Lewis Carroll, because people probably study him, actual scholars, and I bet they just get ticked if you ask them about this movie.
And an author.
They probably know a lot about it because they probably wrote thesis papers on Lewis Carroll and have a lot of studies on him.
Well, then they should make the movie.
Well,
if they know everything.
That was the discussion on Alice in Wonderland. So now we got to figure out what will be for the next episode on our random generator. Are you going to do a drum roll, please?
No, thanks.
Okay. That was epic. Do you want me to...
Don't tell me. Just, react to it. No, it's a bad one.
It is. You're going to hate this. Oh my god.
No,
we generated, oh man. Do you want to know?
Not really.
The Black Cauldron.
Oh, that's scary.
I've never seen it.
I stopped because I was too scared.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. Oh,
hey,
man.
we both never seen it.
The movie that single-handedly almost tanked the Disney company. Right before they started getting better again. I'm excited to watch that.
I still want Tangled.
Oh man, that's gonna be a good time. I hope Tangled's last.
Wait, is that what other Disney movies have you not seen?
I've never seen Dinosaur. I've never seen Home on the Range. I've never seen Melody Time, Make Mine Music, or The Three Caballeros, and I don't think I've seen Robin Hood. Technically, I don't think I have. I can't remember most of it, and we never owned it, so I don't think I've seen it.
That's a good one.
Well, we'll see you next time then, I guess, when we talk about the one and only Black Cauldron, and we'll see you next time when you wish upon a star.
Breathtaking color and fantastic imagery. Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland. The greatest achievement in animation since Fantasia is back. Alice in Wonderland. Rated G.
Starts Friday at a theater near you.